thousands of years of research that say that in order to feel fulfilled and happy at the end of your life, you need to contribute to something bigger than yourself. Or you need to be connected to something that matters to you. Of course, we're 20, whatever. We don't know what's important for us, but also we don't have that luxury of asking ourselves in the society we live in first, okay, what do I want to be in service of, for example, right?
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Reflect Forward. I'm your host, Kerry Siggins, and I'm so glad you are here today. Today's conversation is with Nathalia Del Moral, one of the founders of Next Mountain Life, a platform devoted to helping high-performing leaders navigate what they call the second mountain. They work with accomplished executives, entrepreneurs, and operators who have climbed significant mountains and now are asking, what the heck comes next? Not because they failed, but because they succeeded. Their perspective bridges ambition and reflection, scale and meaning. And Nathalia and Marie challenge leaders to examine whether they are climbing higher or climbing differently. I was recently a guest on their podcast, The Next Mountain, and I shared my own journey. And today I wanted to turn the lens onto Nathalia and explore this idea more deeply through the reality of leading a company, expanding impact, and choosing not to sacrifice freedom, which is what's most important to me in the process. I look forward to pressure testing this idea with Nathalia and exploring what grounded evolution truly requires. So hang tight, and I will be right back with Nathalia. All right, everyone, I am back with my guest, Nathalia. Nathalia, thank you so much for joining me on this show today. I'm so glad you were here.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. So I met you through YPO, and I was on your podcast to talk about the second mountain. I want to share a little bit of what I shared on there with you because we'll use it for a little bit of context as we go through this podcast, because I want to ask you some questions about when do you know you're on your second mountain or just refining your first mountain? Could you explain what the second mountain is and a little bit about what you do?
So some call it second, some call it the next, because some have many. I'm just going to say it like that. So we call it the next mountain. And it's basically a shift in life. It can be described in many ways. It could be going from external motivation to more intrinsic motivation. And it could be, okay, I've achieved this kind of level of success that defined my own terms was important. And I have this moment in my life where I'm wondering, okay, what's next? Now, what happens? Usually there's an identity shift, motivation, meaning, all great questioning. You feel back like an adolescent again. It's fantastic. And then you discover, okay, why am I here on earth? And what's important in this second phase of my life? We help people that are in that phase, in that transition. It's often leaders, but it can be entrepreneurs. There's a strong trigger when entrepreneurs sell their business because they're like, oh, I've lost my baby and everything that had meaning for me. And so what's next for me? So that next chapter, that next mountain, we're there to help them connect to that. And we've found that it's very much going from like head, like first mountain is smarts, is doing what society told you was important, to actually connecting to, okay, what's important, what's in my heart, what is it that I desire that's important for me and fulfilling.
Did you go through a second mountain to create this business? Tell a little bit about the creation of your baby.
That second baby. Yeah, definitely. I did have a first mountain. I don't think I would have called it like that when I was on it. The first part of your career, you're working hard, building everything you said you're supposed to build. Anyway, I was a CEO of subsidiary of French cosmetics companies for Canada and the US. I was really young. Like you were younger when you were, but I was quite young. Anyway, like in my early 30s, became CEO, and I surfed that mountain for a while, that wave. It was very interesting. But at some point I was disoriented and feeling that I had given all that I needed to give, and it was no longer my mission to continue in that role. And so I quit at that time for many reasons. And at that point, I thought quitting was going to be easy and to find the next thing would be easy, but it was actually very disorienting, very difficult. And I learned so much going through the transition myself. And so now the next mountain is my second mountain after years of research. And it was about connecting to what's important for me, what's the impact I want to have in the world, what's the difference I think I can have, given everything that's going on as well, like what's needed. And that's how I'm here today.
So do you think everyone goes through a second mountain or maybe the next mountain because they might have multiples? So is this part of just growing up and maturing? Or do some people they feel like, oh, I've just climbed this way and I'm good to go. And they never have that realization that there's something different that they want to do?
It's a great question. And I think probably everyone has an evolution, right? Like you said, it's learning, maturing. Now, not everyone goes to the same levels of depth. And there's a few frameworks we can use for that, like levels of consciousness, for example. And not everyone will do it through a change in career. Someone will do a change of marriage or simply a change of roles or just change within, right? And so it doesn't mean it's external. I love to speak about the different types of intelligence. Usually in the first half of our life, we have some type of intelligence, and then our brain kind of evolves and we develop a different type of intelligence. So it's also changing from being good at executing creativity, ideas, to actually connecting the dots, mentoring, coaching, teaching. So everyone goes through that similar arc. Now, it's more intensive for some than others, and specifically people that transition from a very demanding role to something else live it very intensely. The reason why we're focusing on this next mountain is because it's so under discussed. We think entrepreneurs sell their business and it's okay, now I'm successful, I've achieved what society says I need to achieve. 100% of them are depressed after they sell. So it's very surprising to learn that some external triggers can actually make it more intense. And either you stay in that kind of like finding my way, being kind of okay with this and doing what you know, or you explore what you don't know that you don't know. You become more conscious, you become more connected to yourself. And so the triggers can be anything. And no, I don't think everyone will go through that intensity of the transition, but yeah, everyone will grow for sure.
As we talked about on your podcast, I don't know, we wove it, we threaded it together. I think my first next mountain was when I overdosed in 2006. And so I was 27 years old and it was hitting rock bottom for me. And looking back on it now and seeing the revolution that I made, it was really a revolution, not just an evolution. It really did come down to identity and changing how I saw myself. It set me on a completely different trajectory. It still had ambition, drive, work, overperformance, things like that. That has led to a lot of success, but it was very different than how I had been leading my professional and personal life in my 20s. And so I hit rock bottom. I quit my job. I pack up my stuff. I moved back home with my mom and completely rebuild my life, rebuild my identity.
Yeah.
And I'm getting ready to I am in the transition of the next mountain, which I don't think I know won't be as shocking as the first one.
Yes.
It's interesting to be in this situation where I had this very visceral, okay, I have to change. I am miserable. I am not happy.
Yeah.
It's not from selling a business, right? It was deciding that I was going to dig in and understand why I was making the decisions I was making and rebuild my life, to this next one that I'm on, which is much more intentional. But I think because I had this experience of what it takes to do identity reconstruction and rebuilding your life, it's not going to be at least as viscerally dramatic. It might be as dramatic in the end when you get from like A to B and you see where you're going, like this one was. I wanted to ask that question because I think you're right. I think some people, it is very intense, very emotional. And for others, it is more of this gradual thing. And you look back and you're like, wow, that was a trigger or a disruptive point in my life. And I didn't realize how big it was, but it set me on this different trajectory.
Yeah.
Was yours more of the visceral one or was it more of the gradual one?
It's interesting. I just want to point to what you're saying also. The first time you go through it is harder because you've never done it. You're more attached to that identity. You also don't have the resources to do that shift. Like rebuilding an identity is not necessarily easy or comfortable, but once you've done it, it's like the onion has more layers or, it's easier. So I think there's also that's coming into play.
Yeah.
But then also, is it an external trigger? Is it internal trigger? And it doesn't mean it makes it easier, internal or external, actually, but it's a bit different. So in my case, it was a bit of both. I was a retailer. So the company I was managing was a retail company during crises of COVID, like the yo-yo of opening, closing stores. It was quite hard. So I did that for a while, but it drastically changed my role. I was no longer having that much fun after a couple of years after COVID. Yeah. I had my plan. I was like, okay, I'm going to be here for 3-4 years. This is what I'm going to achieve. And I had kind of achieved all of that. So I was quite happy with what I had delivered. So a cycle was finishing. But then also internally, I had been researching more and more economy and ecology. So how is our relationship with the living world? How is our economy affecting? And what's the problem with the resources and pollution? And what's that climate change theme that keeps popping in the news? And the more I dove into it, the more I became interested. And so I ended up studying a second master's on ecology and economics, and it kind of flipped my world. I say kind of, it totally did. And I was really depressed for a long time because of everything that's happening. And once you see the big picture, it's really hard as an individual to feel empowered to change anything. And my day to day, really hard work had no correlation or causation with trying to solve this. And so it became really hard not to listen to, okay, it's important. We need to do something about this. I actually need to change. I'm not motivated to wake up in the morning anymore and to go to work to do this. So it was a bit of both, many things. And I'm a woman and I was trying to have kids too and had a lot of miscarriages. It was really hard. And then, undergo surgery and everything. And so it was too many things at the same time. And so at some point I had to say, you know what, it's time to change and refocus and ask myself, okay, how can I be on this earth knowing everything that I know and given what I'm living? What else do I want to do?
So what you just said resonates with me because you were going from maybe a state of incoherency into
Yes,
coherency.
absolutely.
And I think that that is such an important aspect, right? So coherence is when your decisions, your values, your energy, your heart space is all in alignment. And when we're not coherent, there's something that's off. It's hard to be in coherence when we're young because we just don't know. We don't know what we are good at yet. We don't know what we want. Society tells us that we need to do XYZ to achieve, or we need to have children because we're women and we need to be mothers and all of these different things instead of going like, what brings me coherence? Is that a good definition that as you go to your next mountain, you're seeking more coherence in your life?
Yeah, definitely. Like an entrepreneur that sells his business, for example, he might be in alignment and coherence with what he wanted, his success, but once he sells it, then there's the surprise, the shock of like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, actually, I thought I wanted time. I'm actually
Yeah.
not good at enjoying free time because I'm used to building things and being in action. I thought I wanted to be rich. Okay, actually, the relationship with money is very complicated and I'm not sure it's making me happy or having too much choice is making people miserable. So that's when the misalignment happens. So it
Yeah.
might be that it is your first mountain, you become misaligned with it, like what you're saying, coherence, but it also can be a trigger that creates that kind of misalignment. You're like, okay, now I need to rethink and I need to listen, like what's happening inside, what's going on in my mind, and what's important for me now, given everything that has shifted.
So I love this juxtaposition of my first next mountain with something that was very visceral, very shocking. I have to do something different to this next mountain where really in this next chapter, I am no longer willing to sacrifice my freedom. I'm not willing to sacrifice it for my ambition, for my drive, for the way that I want other people to see me, because that has been such a motivator in my life. I have to overperform. I always have to prove myself. And even money. Money to me is a tool for freedom. It's energy. It's a tool for freedom instead of this thing for status or to make myself feel better or all the reasons why we think that we need lots and lots of money. That is my declaration, right? I'm no longer willing to sacrifice my freedom, not for my ambition, not for my drive, not for my wealth creation goals. So I would like to ask you, when someone makes a declaration like this, what mountain are they standing on? Is my desire for freedom a sign of my next mountain, or is it simply better boundaries on the current mountain I'm on?
Hmm. That's such a good question. I don't think it's either or. I think it's both.
Yeah.
But it depends. We can see it a bit like a cycle. So in transition, there's different stages. So usually the first stage is mourning, is you're actually dissolving. And you can think of the butterfly in the cocoon. Like before it transforms into a butterfly, it actually dissolves, it disappears. So the past identity and whatever's the shackles for you that you had, or the feeling of being shackled, you needed to let it go and be like, this is making me unhappy. And so I want to let go of that and whatever that meant. So marriage, role, responsibility, whatever. But then there's the exploration. So the second one is, okay, now that I know that this part of me died, what else is there and what's important for me? And so that's when you connect to, okay, freedom. I want freedom. This is what's important for me. So it's in that kind of liminal in between space that you're finding this. And then the next stage is exploring. Okay, what does freedom look like? In your case, there's money's involved. And I don't know what else was freedom for you, Kerry.
Commitment to my time, the people that I spend my time with, right?
Right.
High energy people who I am in more coherence with. So it's not sucking my energy, me feeling like I don't have to manage other people's emotions. And that sucks my energy away. To me, freedom is doing what I want to do when I want to do it with the people who I want to do it with without fear of I'm not good enough. I'm going to lose everything that I have. fear that I'm not going to be able to take care of myself, right? Those mental loops that we run that keep the shackles on, right? The shackles are fear.
And it's interesting because what you're saying is that everything you know from the past that were shackles, now you're saying, I don't want any of that.
Yeah.
So that's related to your past mountain. But your desire of this is the freedom I want now goes to now exploring and testing that. So I'm going to test being with the people I enjoy with, like enjoying money the way I want to and doing what I want to do in my days. And you're going to learn. And that's going to be your second mountain, right? Or your next mountain, whatever. Because you're going to be discovering, okay, what does freedom look like, feel like? Sometimes we are quite like declaring something like this is very powerful because you're anchoring yourself in the future. And I like to say our actions and the way we behave are determined by who we think we're going to be and not so much our past, because that gives you more empowerment, more freedom. You're probably going to love that. But then you still need to test and learn it, because what you think you're going to feel and how you think you're going to be is different from what reality will be like. And so that's the fourth stage, exploration, learning. And I would say that ties into starting the second. So to go back to your question, it's kind of that liminal place, both in relationship to mourning, closing the last chapter, and designing, co-creating the next one.
I thought about this as I was preparing for this podcast, thinking about, okay, is this just an evolution of the current mountain that I'm on, or is this the next mountain? And I'm at the base of the next mountain.
Okay.
And I know that because my relationship with ambition has changed.
Okay.
And I think that is a key driver for this. I'm curious what you think about ambition and our evolution through our mountains, because to me, ambition isn't important. I still want to have an impact. I still want to do big things, right? I love to write and speak, and I want to grow a company, but I don't have that same, at least maybe it's a different kind of ambition driven by something that is different. But my relationship with ambition has changed. And that is what I'm so excited about on this next mountain, because I'm letting go of all of those things that I did because it was driven by fear. And I'm letting my ambition be more flowing and more creative and less about drive and success and money and titles and things like that. In your opinion, as you help leaders, entrepreneurs, people go through this, how do you see their relationship with ambition change? Do you have smaller goals when you're on your next mountain? Or are you just have like cleaner, simpler, clearer energy around your goals?
Yeah, I love this question. And you're touching to the heart of what we're doing, like why we exist. So thank you so much for that question. The reason why we created Next Mountain is that we realize that a lot of the story of success that we hear and why we are starting to build ourselves in that first part of our lives and our egos and is very extrinsic, right? But at some point we realize it's a bit of a myth. Like all that we achieve, a lot of it was important to build ourselves, but it was not actually fulfilling. And it's at that moment where we kind of flip and we're like, okay, what does that success actually look like for me? Or ambition in your case? What is my ambition, right? And thousands of years of research that say that in order to feel fulfilled and happy at the end of your life, you need to contribute to something bigger than yourself. Or you need to be connected to something that matters to you. And so we don't, of course, we're 20, whatever, we don't know what's important for us, but also we don't have that luxury of asking ourselves in the society we live in first, okay, what do I want to be in service of, for example, right? And so we build, we prove ourselves, we check the list, we go up the ladder, fantastic. And at some point we're like, okay, a lot of this actually I don't care about. And what I actually want is very different. I'm not sure what I want, but I feel unfulfilled. I feel empty. That's where we like to show up and help people bridge and find, okay, what is it? What is your ambition? And I loved your question. You said, it's how are you connected to what success is? Like, how are you very much in tune, in coherence, like you were saying, to what is now your ambition? And we work with people trying to ask questions that they would not ask themselves otherwise. Like, what did you love to do when you were a kid? Can you connect to these parts of you that, when you were playful and you had time and you didn't care what people think and you were joyful and had fun? What kind of pain in the world actually makes you very sad? What are you hopeful for? And like trying to reconnect to that meaningful desire that shows up in them. And it's quite interesting, the questions that emerge. Some have like very small, it's my community. I just want to be helping my close community. Others, they want to solve diabetes, like so many things show up. But then I think it's when people actually, their potential becomes kind of fully alive. They come alive, they thrive. It's just like they show up differently. Yeah. And I can feel that in how you're sharing your next mountain. You're like, I have this different ambition now. It feels more important. No?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's about experience, right? I've thought long and hard about this. I still want to build to scale. Like, I still love growing Stone Age. I'm not planning on not being the CEO of Stone Age for a long time. I'm going to move into executive chair eventually and be involved with the company for as long as I'm adding value and they still want me around, which hopefully is a long time. And I feel very fortunate and grateful that I'm in a situation that I can start to see it that way because not everybody's like that. I still want to have global impact. So I still have all these ambitions, but it's through this lens of experience. And that is what I'm trying to do to ensure that my ambition, these things that I still want to do, to have fun, to create these experiences for myself, don't erode that freedom. So, for example, I got off of multiple boards and I said no to a couple of commitments. It's like, look, this isn't moving me forward in the way that I want to go. It's taking up my time and reducing my freedom and not helping me with wealth creation. It's not helping me build at scale. Why am I doing these things? It's because I feel bad saying no. Okay, no more of that. That's eroding my freedom to give myself more space to be able to have these different experiences. So I've gotten really clear on that. We're here to expand consciousness. It's all just an experience. And we humans, egos, we put good and bad on things. And some bad things do happen, but it's all about experiences. So, how do I maximize my experience, both of the hard things and the good things, but making sure that it doesn't erode that freedom? And this is where the work is because, right, we leaders, we're so programmed to do, to work. We have to put in so much effort. We have to care about making money. We have to care about being successful. We have to care about the car that we drive and the size of our house and all of these things that don't actually matter. And so, how do you work with your clients, who I'm assuming are all high performers, to ensure they don't re-enslave themselves as they're breaking down this identity of who they were and how they were successful?
Yeah. You said it really well a few seconds ago because you said, I'm going from my first mountain, which is a bit more about fear driven to now desire. Usually we're motivated either by fear, by desire, or I would say authentic self. Like it's a bit of a triangle. And once you become quite aware of why you're doing what you're doing, you're more empowered to continue on that route or to change. Definitely if you're doing something by fear, meaning external motivate, approval, or I don't know, a fear of not having enough money, fear of not being good enough for your parents, whatever it is, then you can become detached from that and decide, okay, I actually no longer want to be doing this because of that fear. I'm enough and I should be finding answers on my own. Desire can be good. It can also be ego driven. So it's like about being a bit more in tune to that, like what's behind that desire? What values are you honoring? And is it actually something that's long-term desire or maybe short-term, right? Or is it curiosity, exploring, learning? Is it a phase or is it more meaningful? And when you get to what's really meaningful is when you're in your authentic self. So reconnecting to, okay, what's actually important for me? What am I here to do on this earth? Once you got the answers to that, then it's quite hard to get back into those shackles or do things, you're no longer supposed to do because that mission, your why, your purpose will become stronger than everything else.
One of the things I do to ensure that I don't is I have a list of the things I'm available for and the things I'm not available for anymore. And I read that every morning. And I think that's really helpful in this identity shift because you do brush up against those wounds that you have, even if you've done the work.
Yeah.
And I've done so much deep work, but I can feel when I brush up against my I'm not enough or what are people going to think of me wound. And I have so much more awareness around it. And I can say, no, I'm not going to go there. But it's nice to continuously reinforce this shift because I'm making this shift real time. It's not like I'm ending something like I did when I left Austin and moved back to Durango. It was a clear end to that life. And I'm stepping into this new life. Selling your company, right? It's a clear end. This is much more of a subtle evolution.
Yeah.
And so it's a good reminder of this is what I'm available for. This is what I'm not available for. So when I start to get that tug of like, oh, I should do that. Or what is somebody going to think of me if I say no, or if I do this, that I don't go back into those same patterns.
It's funny that you say that because it's true. It's harder in the sense you're triggering that change, right? So you're making sure you're not falling into traps. But what we notice is, let's say an entrepreneur sells his business, her business, the behavior that person used to have they still replicate them even though they
Mhm.
don't have the business. So how
Yeah.
can I keep myself busy? So they have a bunch of activities. It's like they're doing nothing, but they're so busy. It's strange, and it's not, because it's how you know how to be. And so that's why you need to ask yourself those questions and be kind of aware of what's happening. And usually what we've learned is kind of addiction to cortisol plays a bit of a role in it. Like just being empty space doesn't feel good when you're driven and when you're good at building things. And now they're telling you you have time, and you're like, I'm actually not enjoying time. It doesn't feel good. And we've learned that. So in that phase, regardless if it's you triggering it or your environment, there's 5 pillars you're going to go through in that transition. So you're going to go through that identity shift we mentioned, like we've been speaking a lot about, and it's the most important and like really the crux of it. But then there's structure and health, like the structure of your day and how you physically feel, because you're shifting energy. You want to be more free. So it's going to feel different in your day to day, hopefully. And so that changes. But when it's an external trigger, such as like empty inbox, no more responsibility, no more employees, it's very destabilizing. Then relationships, because if you're shifting, then your environment is. And maybe they are with you or not, which means that you can feel very isolated, misunderstood. Your employees are no longer employees, maybe, or friends are no longer resonating. Fourth one is money. So your relationship to money. If there's a big change, then you need to become comfortable with that and know what to do. And it can be more tactical questions, but also just philosophical, like, who do I want to be now that I have this money? And the last one is legacy and impact, which is a bit the solution to all of this, which is, okay, reconnect to your purpose, find how you're going to have impact, and then the rest will solve itself. Not by itself, but it will help, like definitely feel more grounded and in coherence, like you said.
I like that framing of that transition, because what I think it probably does for people who are really lost in that moment is understand that it is just a moment in time. You're going to go through these phases, and
Yeah.
what you feel today is not how you're going to feel a week from now, a month from now, a year from now as you go through this. I'm sure that's probably helpful for people to be like, okay, I'm in this phase and it's not going to last forever.
Yeah.
And I can start thinking about, how do I move through this at the right pace for myself so that I allow myself to go through the discomfort of this massive change. When you go through a big identity change, there is a lot of discomfort, and integrate it versus just plow through. Because I have found, being a person who likes to not feel bad about stuff, when I plow through stuff, it really isn't resolved. I haven't integrated, I haven't dealt with it. I've just compartmentalized it, and it usually comes back in a much uglier, more dramatic, emotional way.
It's nice what you're pointing to, because we work with a lot of entrepreneurs or leaders that have a lot of success, and they have a profile. They have a energetic profile that's different. Like they need to sleep less, they have more energy, they're usually high potential, maybe even like ADHD. And so that is a superpower when you're a builder, when you're on your mountain and you're on the track of it. But when you're in that transition phase, it's actually hard, because it's
Yeah.
like your superpowers are not necessarily being used. It's like, okay, now be at peace, listen to the pain, process it. And it's like, that's actually not what I'm good at. And what we've seen is, if I hear you've taken the time to ask yourself the questions and reflect and do the inner work, and we discuss that a lot in our podcast, like you've done the work. But some people don't go there. And when they
Yeah.
don't go there, the transition can be 5, 6, 7, 10 years on. Like it can be really long. There's this research that was done on the 5 archetypes of the post-exit entrepreneurs. Either they become do-it-againers, they become angel investors, philanthropic investors or donators, and the hedonist and the explorer. So those are kind of like the profiles you can become, or a bit of each, right? It's not like a clear cut. But what's interesting is not many of those do the deep work of what's actually my next mountain. They're still in what they know exists, instead of like, okay, what don't I know that exists that I can explore
Okay.
and actually unleash my potential? And to do that, you have to ask harder questions. We've seen a lot of people that, yeah, they go through their transition, they feel better, but the potential is not fully unleashed.
Yeah.
You did it again. Maybe it wasn't really what you wanted, but that's what you knew. So that was easier.
Yep. My whole goal is self-actualization, right? How do I become the most self-actualized person that I can be? I'm not afraid to do that inner work. And here's what I have found to be really helpful. And so anybody who's listening who maybe is like, I haven't done it, or I don't know where to get started with it. I've used coaches, Now I use ChatGPT. I have a spiritual teacher slash therapist, and oh my God, her name's Gloria. She has helped me understand myself such a profound level that nobody, no coach, no therapist has ever helped me go. But what I have learned about myself, and I think this is really powerful and has been the thread through my entire life, is that I activate through my words, both written and spoken. And that's the crux of my leadership. And yes, I'm driven. And yes, I'm a great strategist and I'm decisive. And I have all of these things that have made me a great CEO. But the baseline of what I'm here on earth to do is to activate with my words, to invite people to remember their potential, to remember why they're here, to see themselves as who they truly are, not as the ego or those wounds or this is what society thinks that I should do. So I have that clarity. And what makes that so amazing, even though I still brush up against the fear as I embrace and embark on this next mountain, is that I know that's my gift. I know that's my talent. I know it brings me so much joy. So it's always going to be part of my next evolution. So even when in 10 years, however long, I'm no longer CEO of Stone Age, the things that made me a great CEO, that made me a great team captain of my softball team in college, which made me promotable at my early age to become a CEO in my 20s, has been this ability to activate with my words. So I can take that into this next mountain because I've done that work to understand, like, that's actually my true gift. That's been the foundation of everything that I have been able to do in my career. And so I encourage people to do that because it is so helpful. I have so many people who are like, I have no idea what my purpose is. And my advice is think about the things that you get into the flow doing. What brings you the most joy, and start there, because that's usually going to be a clue of, okay, this is what I always need to keep in my life. So I'm grateful that I have that thread. I think that's why a lot of people die after they retire, right? I mean, my grandfather retired. He grew up in rural Wisconsin with no money, dirt floors, literally poor, was a multimillionaire entrepreneur when he died. And he literally lived, I think, 4 or 5 years after he retired.
Because we don't have a lot of conversation about this transition and what's available next, people are afraid to leave and they leave late. But if you knew what you could give back,
Yes.
how you can contribute, how meaningful that could be, and how valuable that could be to society, then maybe more people would take a leap a tiny bit earlier. I think average lifespan is like 80-ish in North America, at least. If you want to enjoy life, it's quite late. What we've noticed too that is extremely powerful is to put people in transition together. Because entrepreneurs do that best, and YPO is one way to do that. But at YPO, we're usually lonely at the top. So now we're lonely in transition next month. So you're living in transition. That's why we put people in either forums, so we call it base camp, right before your next mountain, or workshops, like 2-day workshops. And it's about going through that process of the stages of the transition I mentioned. And some people are thinking about it. Some people are in it. Some people have it like the past couple of years behind them. And so that speeds up the process quite a bit. I didn't make mistakes as I was able to listen to what other people were living. And I was aware of the questions I was going to live or how the crises would look and feel like. I have the prompts. I have the good questions I should ask myself to go through that. And so that is even more powerful to be in group setting.
Completely agree. I tell people I'm at the place in my growth that I can use something like ChatGPT because I've trained it to not bullshit me. And I've done so much of that work, but without all of the coaches that I've had in my life, the people that have helped me really understand myself and do this work, there's no way that I could have done what I've done now. And I still use that group. I have an amazing women's forum in YPO. There's 5 of us. We've been together for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. And we just had a huge conversation in our last forum meeting last week about, one, our relationship with money, and how like hard it is to be in an organization like YPO where you just constantly see wealth flaunted, although you have no idea what's real or not. And it makes you feel like, am I worthy to be here? Do I make enough money to be talking to these people who fly around the world on private jets and all of these things? We had a big conversation about our relationship with being mothers. So to have done all that work and then to be able to have this amazing group of people, and I cried. I cried for like 10 minutes because I was going through something really hard with my son. He's 13, middle school, like the shittiest time in adolescence is middle school. And it was so powerful to have that sounding board. The person I'm seeing right now, I've never had a relationship like the one I'm in right now. And it's so incredibly powerful because he creates a safe place to be able to talk. And I could say things to him about the way that I feel about money and my decisions with money that I have never been able to say to anyone. So
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I think that you have to have that support system and be able to experience share with people.
And normalize what you're living, because we are supposed to be happy when we exit. Because, okay, now I'm rich, I've achieved success, whatever. I'm actually feeling depressed and sad. That brings a lot of confusion and isolation and guilt. So once you put it in relationship to other people and you see that, actually, I'm not the only one feeling like this. Actually, this is normal. That does a lot of the work already.
Yep.
But then it gives you a bunch of tools. Then you're able to move fast, which entrepreneurs like, forward,
Yes.
and move into the next stage.
Yes, absolutely. I could talk to you about this forever. I love this conversation. So, for people who are feeling dissatisfied, whether it's post transaction or some post traumatic event in their lives, or like me, where I'm ready for this next evolution and it doesn't feel so big, what's the first step that they should take as they're considering what their next mountain looks like?
And you're thinking this as someone that has an internal kind of trigger.
Yeah, like, I'm not happy. It could be an external trigger. There's a lot of people who just aren't happy, and they're like, "I have to do something different with my life. I am not happy. I need to get on that next mountain."
Like I said, it's a process, it's a journey of a few stages. And what's key is not doing by yourself and having the key questions. Find an expert that's going to help you, or find the questions that are going to help you start digging and going into what's happening here, or find a group of peers, find people that will help you. 100% of the entrepreneurs that sold are depressed. I met one guy that was not depressed, and I was like, what's going on? You're so strange. And he said, well, I have a group of people. We exited kind of at the same time, and we followed each other through the transaction and the post. So find a group of people. We have these workshops where you can find a group of people going through the same transition. You can come into the community we're hosting and find either the questions, the content, the theory, but also the guides that will guide you through it. But don't stay in your corner by yourself. I would say that's the thing to avoid. And don't go too fast. Like, a lot of people jump into the next action, and it's good as long as it's an action that allows you to explore and learn. For example, this entrepreneur we interviewed recently, he said, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I know I'm really unhappy, but I need to learn about this. And so I'm going to set myself a challenge. I'm going to do a race. I'm going to do a this or that. And so set yourself challenges or ways to explore, to find, in your case, freedom, or in whatever your case will be, whatever it is in terms of answer, right? So, yeah.
Great. And if people wanted to come to one of your workshops or reach out to you to ask for advice or to work with you, how would they find you?
It's on our website, so nextmountain.life. You can simply book a discovery session. We also have a diagnostic tool where you can figure out where you are in your transition and what pillar is the one that's maybe creating you more pain or more friction. And that's it. The events are all on the website. So, yeah, you'll find everything there.
Wonderful. I'll include all that in the show notes. Okay, final question. That's my signature question. The name of this podcast is Reflect Forward.
Yeah.
I would love to hear what Reflect Forward means to you.
As funny as the sentence reflect forward, it's keeping me both in the present and bringing me in the future. Immediately, what came to mind is that Next Mountain for us is something much bigger than just ourselves, right? The founders and what we want to create. It's bringing me the hope of what's possible. If everyone is in their next mountain, then their coherence with their ambition and their potential is unleashed. So that's immediately what comes to mind, what a world would look like.
Love it. Nathalia, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This was such a fantastic conversation. Thanks for walking through my mountain shifts real time, both on your podcast and my podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been amazing. Next Mountain is a podcast about transition. So about people like you that have gone through the transition, but have an inspiring second, third, fourth mountain, whatever. And it helps us see what it could look like a different story of ambition, different story of success. And it gives you clues to how can you go through that crisis, that transition, but also what is possible. And we do interview two experts as well, experts on the psychology of the transition, the relationship with money, what regeneration means, what impact can look like. And so all those wonderful topics related to the second mountain.
Sounds like a great resource. Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Kerry.
All right, hang tight, everybody. I'll be right back. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Nathalia. This episode to me was really important because it's not about shrinking ambition. We talked about ambition and thinking about my next mountain. For me, it's more about building without self-betrayal. It's about choosing growth rather than surrendering my sovereignty. It's about success that does not, make me feel like I'm giving up freedom. This is what I'm incubating in my life right now. And I loved this conversation because it really makes me think about how do I transition into what's next? So it isn't a revolution, but an evolution. Although there's nothing wrong with revolutions. My revolution back in 2006 was fantastic. It was the best revolution I could have gone through, even though it was so incredibly difficult. So don't be afraid of those revolutions, even though they're hard. So, with that, I will leave you to your day. If you like this podcast episode and think somebody could benefit from learning more about the next mountain and Natalia's work, please feel free to share it with them. And if you like this podcast, please pop over to YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to it. Leave me a comment, rate it, drop me a DM. I always love to hear from you. And I look forward to hosting you next week. Take care.